Donald Trump is completely changing his story when it comes to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and why that relationship ended. And this is a bombshell audio recording which shows that the Trump administration is trying to get their story straight, but Donald Trump simply isn't letting it happen. Today, Donald Trump's flying back from Scotland. He was just on a trip, 5 days to Scotland, in an effort to distract and avoid the American public over the Jeffrey Epstein files and the fact that his government has yet to release the files to the public. And he's been trying to avoid Jeffrey Epstein as much as he could, but he couldn't avoid the Epstein conversation on the plane back. And reporters asked Donald Trump why his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein ended. And previously, if you recall, Donald Trump would always say that Jeffrey Epstein was a creep, that Jeffrey Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a creep. And there was always kind of uniform understanding that that was Donald Trump's story. That's what MAGA Republicans parroted. That's what influencers parroted, that Donald Trump thought Epstein was such a creep that he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. We're learning that's not actually the story today. Because today, Donald Trump said something completely different. He said that he kicked Epstein out because Epstein stole his employees, his underage employees, from places like the Mar-a-Lago spa. Watch this stunning moment.
So, Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. But just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women?
What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Jeffrey?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people, yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
Now, folks, as you can hear in this clip, Donald Trump is literally talking about how Jeffrey Epstein allegedly stole employees of Trump's, including Virginia Giuffre, who was one of the more prominent victims of Jeffrey Epstein, of his horrific crimes, of the sex trafficking ring that Epstein led for decades. And now Donald Trump is saying that that's the reason Epstein was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago, was because he stole employees, not because he was a creep. That, folks, doesn't make any sense anymore. Because what's the real story? Why is Donald Trump changing his story? And why don't the American people still have the Epstein files? It doesn't make sense. Something isn't adding up. And I think there needs to be more questions asked because we're not getting the answers that we want, or rather, the answers that we deserve. The American people deserve answers about Jeffrey Epstein and those around him. Anyone, whether it was a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent associated with Jeffrey Epstein and engaged in Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activities, deserves to be locked away. We agree on that. Republicans, Democrats, independents, everyone agrees on that. Well, except one man, except Donald Trump. And we don't know why, but we're soon going to learn it. As the Department of Justice continues to seek these Epstein files, as Congress, in a bipartisan fashion, continues to fight for the files for Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony, which we're going to talk about in just a second, the American public is going to learn more information about Donald Trump's relationship, not just with Jeffrey Epstein, but also with Epstein's victims. And today, Ghislaine Maxwell, well, she's the topic of conversation on Capitol Hill. Why? because Republicans on Capitol Hill want to bring Maxwell in for a deposition in front of the House Oversight Committee. Now, members of Congress have subpoena power. The Oversight Committee has subpoena power. They subpoenaed Maxwell for a deposition, a sit-down one-on-one conversation, one that would likely be private but transcribed, and the public would eventually see the answers. But Maxwell previously wasn't playing ball with this conversation. She didn't want to sit down with House Oversight Committee members, and for her, there really isn't any incentive to, unless she's getting a deal. So remember, she actually sat down with Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General. Well, yeah, she sat down there. Then her attorney filed her reply brief in front of the United States Supreme Court in her appeal, and then essentially publicly said that they want a pardon from Donald Trump. They directly appealed to Donald Trump in an effort to try to get some type of clemency, some type of commutation or pardon, even before the Supreme Court decides whether or not to hear her appeal regarding a non-prosecution agreement that was entered into in the Southern District of Florida for Jeffrey Epstein that she says also applies to her. Well, members of Congress want to hear from her, subpoenaed her and her testimony, and subpoenaed her for a deposition. And previously, her attorneys were absolutely not, they will not play ball with members of Congress, but that now has changed today. Today, Maxwell laid out a list of conditions for her to appear at a deposition in front of members of Congress, in front of the House Oversight Committees. Let me read you these lists of conditions. The first is a grant of formal immunity, meaning anything and everything she says in front of Congress, except if she perjures herself in front of Congress, would be covered by immunity. She could not get charged for it. The second, the interview can't happen at the correctional facility where she's serving her sentence. Essentially, Maxwell wants to be released from custody, likely not wearing jail garb, likely putting on a suit, and appearing maybe in front of Congress in Washington, D.C., or at some other location in Florida where her facility is located, just not at her jail facility. It's unclear whether or not the Bureau of Prisons would even allow that because she is serving a 20-year sentence for crimes. The third, to prepare adequately for any congressional deposition and to ensure accuracy and fairness, they would require the committee's questions in advance. Surprise questioning would be inappropriate and unproductive. Maxwell is essentially asking the committee to hand over questions that they would ask her ahead of any such depositions. That too is unheard of. A witness never hears the questions before they are asked it in a deposition, whether in front of Congress or otherwise. And the final is that the only way that this deposition is held must be held after the United States Supreme Court adjudicates her pending appeal, which could theoretically take a year plus. But also, not just that, they want to wait until after her habeas proceedings are essentially adjudicated. They haven't filed any habeas proceedings just yet, but it looks like they will try to get her out on other grounds through the federal system. So they're looking for a deposition in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. We don't know how long these proceedings are going to last. Anyways, one question that I would want to know in any deposition is, did Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, steal Virginia Giuffre from Donald Trump? And is that the reason Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein had a falling out? Or was it because Donald Trump thought Jeffrey Epstein was a, quote, creep? Time will tell. Spread the word. I'll do more soon, so subscribe to support, and I'll see you this evening. Hey folks, Aaron Parnas here. Thank you so much for watching The Parnas Perspective. Please consider subscribing to support our work as we grow this independent news media entity into something that rivals mainstream every single day. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.